And where is everyone from today? I am broadcasting from Pennsylvania. It is a beautiful fall day today, a nice departure from the 80-degree weather we had last week, although that was lovely as well. But it is nice to put on sweaters and scarves and not get warmed up overly warm when drinking a warm beverage. I've got some really nice apple spice tea today. I hope you have something that you can enjoy and that you get to drink it while it is still warm. You may have seen in other slideshows, I sometimes have that cup. It's mom goals, getting to drink coffee while it's still warm. One of my sons had bought that for me. Okay, we are going to go ahead and officially get started. So welcome to our live Tuesdays at 2. I'm your host, Antoinette LaGrossa, and I have been with ShillerLearning since 2004. So I have spent a lot of years helping homeschool families. It is my favorite part of what I do here at ShillerLearning. ShillerLearning is part of the nonprofit Rising Stars Foundation, and our goal is to help every child fulfill their potential. So if you like homeschool tips in general or Montessori in particular, we do focus on that Montessori-based approach. Do make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of the Tuesdays at 2 or Larry's really engaging, helpful talks. Explore our blog. There's a lot of great content on there, a lot of support, no matter what curriculum you're using, that'll be beneficial for helping your child. You may see me pause occasionally as I read questions that are coming in real time. So today we are talking about opportunities for growth in mistakes. How you respond to a mistake can impact your child's self-esteem about their intelligence, their willingness to work through challenges, and whether they develop a fixed or growth mindset. And hint, growth mindset is the one that we want. So, yay, my child made a mistake. Now what? Is there anyone out there whose child responds negatively when they make a mistake? If you have that experience and you're seeing that that is becoming, an issue in your homeschooling, it's a stumbling block, a roadblock for your student, go ahead, put that into the chat. You can message privately, you can direct message that, but we want to make sure that we give practical application to the tips that we are going to talk about. So neuroscience has discovered that the brain is like a muscle, and we need to flex it and push past our comfort zone to grow in skill and competence. And it used to be thought that the brain was pretty much established by a certain age. And then at some point, you would start to actually lose brain cells and ability. The brain is much more plastic than what was previously thought. And we are not born with a fixed amount of intelligence. And once we get to that, well, game over, and anything beyond that is out of our reach. But how we respond to mistakes could actually impact our child into developing a fixed mindset where they mistakenly believe that they have a fixed set of intelligence and abilities. And once they hit something that is challenging and doesn't come easily and naturally, something that they have to work through, well, then that means they're not smart enough for it. That can just sabotage homeschool success, make our day a lot less enjoyable than it could be otherwise. And homeschooling is such an awesome experience. You'll have moments with your child you would not have otherwise. Um, there will be those times where it's not what maybe how you had imagined homeschooling would be when you were, thinking about it, but we can certainly minimize those down days. Now, before we dive into helping prevent our students from falling into a fixed mindset trap of frustration and discouragement at the sight of mistakes, let's make sure the work that we're offering the child is at the right level. So, all of the tips that follow will help with mistakes, but the type of frustration and discouragement that comes when we're giving our child work that's not at the correct level for them, that's going to be tough to overcome. So if your child is fifth grade, but they don't have the foundational math skills to do fifth grade level work, and you've purchased a fifth grade math book, that is setting them up for failure and frustration. So, how do you fix that? And that's by not assuming knowledge. Schiller Learning offers diagnostic testing. It's included right in our curriculum. By the way, if you have Math Kit 2, we can set you up at no charge for that Math Kit 1 diagnostic testing to ensure indeed there aren't any gaps from earlier on that'll sabotage their success. It's included in the curriculum, but you can also purchase those individually. They're going to ensure that we're filling any gaps from earlier on in that knowledge foundation, whether it's math or language arts. You can do that same method of questioning no matter what subject that you're looking at. Simply use from some testing from earlier on to go through and make sure, and it can be in a casual conversation questioning setup. It doesn't have to have that high stakes testing feel. But once you know that the work is developmentally appropriate and it's where your child um, should be placed, then you know that, okay, we can deal with any mistakes that are coming up in a really constructive way. Okay, the Schiller learning philosophy says that every mistake is a learning opportunity. It really is. It encourages discussion and improves understanding of concepts and processes. It's true for all education topics, you know, homeschool math, language arts, life in general. The language used by home educators in identifying and correcting mistakes has that huge impact on how well or how poorly children learn from mistakes and are able to avoid repeating those same mistakes again in the future. Um, Larry Schiller is a big fan of the work of Carol Dweck, and she's written extensively on that fixed and growth mindset. We do recommend those resources. You can find, check out her book at the local library. But, you know, in a nutshell, in a growth mindset, challenges are exciting rather than threatening. So rather than thinking, okay, I'm going to reveal my weakness, you say, wow, here's a chance to grow. And, all homeschoolers and us as adults can benefit from having that outlook. So I hope this is helping you get more excited about your child's next mistake because guess what? Yes, mistakes will occur early and often. And parents with children that reach their full potential have a good, clear strategy for dealing with those situations. Okay, so first is to identify that mistakes are opportunities to fill some gaps that are developing in the child's knowledge or approach. So this is separate from that questioning to make sure that you have a proper placement in the curriculum. So as mistakes come up when you're moving through where you've properly placed the child, that's helping you to see that, okay, maybe there was a part of this process that wasn't fully understood, or maybe they're forgetting a part of it, or maybe they understood but are working through really quickly and making careless mistakes and not self checking. And by being able to spot those opportunities, seeing it as an opportunity to spot what is the cause behind that mistake, it's an opportunity for growth, whether academically or in their personal habits of, okay, I need to slow down and actually pay attention to what I am doing here. There is only one right answer, by the way. There may be 10 or 20, or in the case of the Pythagorean theorem, scores of ways that you can arrive at that correct answer. Um, but there is indeed only one right answer. That is the goal, but we do want to focus on the process. We're going to talk about that bit more. But you can ask questions when your child is making a mistake to help them, you know, identify that mistake and why they are making it. Just like Larry is a big fan of Carol Dweck, and you'll see a lot of that, those techniques incorporated into the curriculum and the way that Schiller Learning approaches education. Larry has the Socratic method, as well as, of course, the Montessori, because we are Montessori based curriculum. But the Socratic method of teaching with questioning is really effective, especially when it comes to a child making a mistake, so that you can ask them. The number one recommended way is, if your child gives a wrong answer, is to ask a question for which the wrong answer would be a right answer. And that can often trigger that recognition of, oh, that isn't the correct answer because this one fits here. You can also ask questions in that case of they're working through very quickly, they're not going back and checking their work, or maybe they're not writing the math down. And so they're more able, um, more susceptible to making simple calculation errors, than asking questions that help them to realize that, okay, maybe this wouldn't have taken so much time if I didn't have to redo things, if I had done it more neatly the first time. So in that, you are focusing on the process, not the person. So when kids, just like adults, mess up, we don't like to hear that, we're less of a person because of it, especially if it's, on an academic thing. Um, so we want to avoid blaming a child for a mistake. It can discourage the child from wanting to try anything other than what they excel at with very little effort or thought. So, avoid blaming the child. And we can say that again and again and again, but that takes a lot of different forms. So that includes using phrases that we do with the best of intentions. So sometimes when we see your child is struggling with something, we chime in, oh, this is easy. You should be able to get it. Or sometimes when we're feeling a little frustrated ourselves, we've done this 25 times already. How can you not get it? All of those things are going to make the child feel blamed for the mistake, sap their internal motivation, and make them think that they just can't get it. So instead, focus on the process and try using phrases like, can you walk me through the process? And, I might have come up with a different answer. Walk me through your steps to solve this problem. Or let's see how we can get to the correct answer and understand why this wasn't correct. Or maybe there's a different approach. Let's start from the beginning. What part do you need help with? That's another question. That is really one of my personal favorites. And when, Schiller Learning, we do support the curriculum when students call up asking for help. By the way, not only will we support it directly to the parent, but for older kids, we will support it directly to them. So when a child calls up and says, "Oh, I'm in lesson book 6, I'm having trouble with lesson 52." The first question we ask is, what part do you need help with? Because that is going to get them to, first off, think about what they do understand, starting with that base knowledge. Now, it's implicit, it's implied in that question, but that's where they're going to start. What part do you need help with is they will usually start off with thinking about what they do know in order to better identify the part that they need assistance with. If that doesn't happen, you can actually ask them, okay, let's start with what you do know. Tell me about that. Uh, and those two things, what part do you need help with and what do you already know, can really help, along with all of those other phrases, children spot and self-correct mistakes while they're explaining their own process. When kids do that, when they self-correct, they are indeed less likely to repeat that mistake again in the future. They're not discouraged by that mistake. And they'll see it as an opportunity to better hone whatever skill it is that they are working on. If they're not able to self-correct in a situation, then you'll be able to spot that learning opportunity in the mistake in their process, and you'll be able to see what you need to hone in on so that you're not jumping in and explaining the entire thing and going over things that they don't need. There's that term mansplaining, and we want to avoid that in education also, because that can also be demotivating to the child if we're jumping in and explaining things that they don't need and do already know. So sit back, observe, listen, let the child tell you, let them show you. And just like, you've probably heard one of my favorite Montessori quotes, which is, show them, don't tell them. And the same holds true when you're asking your child to go through the process. Let them show you. They can tell you, but it's powerful to not only listen to them, but observe what they are doing. A lot of teaching happens in that observation, and that's something that's really stressed in Montessori. So resist the temptation to jump in right away to help. Okay, also keep in mind that it is okay to skip a lesson for which the student is not developmentally ready. Again, this is different than that making sure they're placed into the correct spot in a curriculum. This is, sometimes, kids have different strengths and weaknesses. You might get to an activity and not only, you know, do they find it challenging, but they may hit a wall. And if you see them getting frustrated, you can simply offer, I see you're not developmentally ready for this. Let's put it aside and come back to it another time. And if the student is not ready, do not force feed the lesson. Simply try the next day and instead continue for now with the next activity in the book. When we do that, as if it's not a big deal, just very matter of factly, let's move on to the next thing, it can help students be less afraid of failure and more likely to decide with internal rather than external motivation to work through things that do not come easy. And sometimes when you offer to a child that, oh, I see you're not developmentally ready for this, they can feel that internal challenge, like, wait, I can do this, and work through something with that internal motivation that would have otherwise been very um, counterproductive. So another important component to focusing on the process and not the person is recognizing that we all require different amounts of practice to master different skills. So one child may need to practice math facts to 9 using dominoes maybe 3 times before they master that skill. And being able to do it reflexively without stopping to think about it and with accuracy. That's what we mean by mastering that skill. Another child may do that same activity 7 times before achieving that same level of mastery. That's okay. You've probably heard me use this analogy before, but I really like it. It's learning to tie your shoes. It would seem silly to say that, after 10 attempts, a child should be able to tie their shoes. It's different for everyone, as was crawling and walking, riding a bike, etc. So choosing an amount of repetition for academic skills is just as arbitrary and can indeed be demotivating to a child, making them feel as though they don't have what it takes, as opposed to they have a goal, they're working towards it, and that hard work, focusing on that process, will get them there in time. And so if your child is making mistakes, it's okay for them to be revisiting activities until they are able to achieve that mastery. Another thing when a child makes a mistake is to be sure that you are using all of the learning styles. So knowledge is best learned when things are introduced in the concrete and gracefully transition to the abstract, and the child is learning by doing. So if there's a mistake, think about, okay, what are the different learning styles? If you're using Schiller Learning curriculum, you can look up that concept and see all of the lessons that teach that. And so you can see, okay, maybe we will pull out these other lessons that are using other learning styles to see if that helps to bolster that understanding. Of course, you'll also simply get to those things in the course of the curriculum, but you can absolutely utilize your concept and manipulative indexes to be a little more flexible in the advancement through the curriculum. And along those lines, you can get creative. So you can always think about different ways of explaining and showing things. Don't feel like no matter what curriculum it is that you're using, that you are limited to what is in front of you. Be creative. Also, resist the urge to interrupt a focused and concentrated child. If you see your child is working really hard through something, simply saying to them, "Oh, I see how hard you're working on that." Even though that's great and that's a good comment because you're focusing on the process as opposed to simply saying, "Oh, good job," or "pretty picture," or "nice essay." You've focused on that process that is going to help that grow. But by giving that praise while the child is working, that in itself can be enough to distract the student from what they are doing. And then you can always, if that questioning doesn't work, the focusing on that process, they didn't self-correct. As I mentioned, simply, identifying, okay, where that growth opportunity is, you can then go back to basics and use that 3 period lesson to reintroduce whatever it is as if for the very first time. Again, without any judgment in our facial expressions, in our body language, in our tone of voice. We don't want to seem frustrated that the child made a mistake and we have to show them something again, because that is going to make them fear making mistakes, and it's going to make them really self-critical and make them not want to go outside of their comfort zone. We can also let our children know when we ourselves are finding something challenging, and or we are nervous about trying something new, or we have to work really hard at a goal that we ourselves are trying to achieve, whether it's an academic goal, a financial goal, a personal fitness, or maybe a cleaning or a cooking, whatever it is in our life. When we find something challenging, to raise that awareness to our kids that, I'm nervous about this, or this is something I'm really working hard at. It helps them to become aware of that. Discussing that growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Don't keep these as just, secret tools in your toolbox, although you definitely want to be, have these tools and be using them, but also have that discussion with your child, discussing goals, discussing, the fixed and growth mindset, discussing focusing on the process. And with that awareness, it can help them even go down those roads without always having to be prompted. Also, keep a sense of humor. We like to laugh at ourselves when we make a mistake and keep things light, and the same goes for kids. So keep a sense of humor when your child is making a mistake. Acknowledge limitations with a wink, a smile. Keeping that positive attitude helps your child to mirror that behavior that you are wanting them to have. And again, verbalize about your own mistakes and your own learning opportunities. One of the things that you can do is to um, have a growth mindset notebook. And with that, it any number of pages is fine. It doesn't have to be a big notebook. Um, if it had 26 pages, you of course could go from A to Z. On the first page, you could write plan A. On the next page, plan B, and so forth, however many pages that you have. Again, if you have 26 pages, you can go up to plan Z. But it could be just one of those really little pocket spiral notebooks. And that is a visual that you can use, that when your child makes a mistake, hits a stumbling block, you can get, okay, well, that was plan A. Let's flip to plan B. And it's a visual that can help them to think of, okay, I need to take a different approach to this, along with all of those other things of, let's walk through your process, but getting them to say, okay, I need to think about this in another way. Uh, so you can actually create some visual cues to go along with this. You can also include work the learning opportunities and the growth opportunities of mistakes into your language arts, into your journaling. And if you see that your child had made a mistake and spotted an opportunity for growth or better understanding of something, encourage them to write about that. And again, focusing on that process and how that journey got them to a better place. Which, by the way, doing that is going to help them in their writing skills because, of course, a great story, the protagonist always has some stumbling blocks and a challenge that they have to overcome to get to that climax of the story. And so recognizing that in their learning process and being able to verbalize that in journaling is going to help them spot those elements when they are doing creative writing too. Okay, well, I hope that these tips will help your child to cultivate a growth mindset and seize the learning opportunities in mistakes. Did anyone have any questions about any of those tips on implementing those? Or have a particular challenge in the way that their child handles mistakes that you're not sure how to apply those tips that we went over. Now, next week, we will be back with Tuesdays at 2 talking about homeschooling. Don't go it alone and all of the many networking opportunities that are available and the ways that we can support each other as home educators and really encouraging you in that you do not have to be going through this on your own and reach out, enjoy the support of your fellow home educators. And let's see, let me just go through here. It looks like we did work everything in. So if there aren't any other questions or if there isn't anything else that you wanted to chat about today, oh, by the way, if you have questions on anything else, go ahead and put those into that chat box also. And then if nothing pops up there, we will call it a day. And we will see you next week on Tuesday at 2 for homeschooling. Don't go it alone. Bye, guys.